What is log? Why do my EXR renders look so bad? How do I properly handle color management in visual effects? If you are anything like me as a beginner, you might be asking yourself those same questions. By the end of this video, you'll be able to handle any footage inside of visual effects and impress your supervisors with this ACES workflow. We're going to be going over everything from DaVinci to Blender to Nuke and everything else in between, so buckle up because this is my most important visual effects tutorial yet. Also, on Patreon, I'll be providing my professional footage that I shot on a cinema camera in log so that you guys can use to practice and also follow along with this tutorial. Of course, the link to check that out is down below. Anyways, let's go ahead and hop into the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, we're in DaVinci to start off with. That's because we want to go ahead and transfer the color space from whatever we shot it in into a linear ACES color space that we're going to be using throughout the entire project. And so this will be heavily dependent on what camera you actually use, what file you're downloading, anything like that. If you are working in a visual effects project, you want to make sure you ask those questions such as, hey, what camera did you guys use? What color space did you guys shoot in? Kind of stuff like that. And so anyways, let's go ahead and see the actual clip that we're going to be working with today. And so as you can see, we have this shot that we're going to be working with today. You can see it's in a log view, and that is very intentional on my part. This is very common if you're working in the visual effects industry. You're not going to be given Rec 709 footage. You're going to be given log footage. And so we're going to be answering how to actually go ahead and convert this into a proper color space and actually how to render this out so that you can please a client and say this needs to be rendered out in Rec 709 or it needs to be rendered out in the same exact color space so a colorist can deal with it and stuff. We're going to be tackling all of that stuff today. So this was shot on a Sony FX30. Again, if you are a Patreon member, I will actually have a link so you can download this exact footage we're going to be using today. Whether you want to just follow along with what we're doing or use it for practice footage, everything is fine for me. So again, check out the link in the description below to join my Patreon for amazing shots and behind the scenes content like this. But let's go ahead and import this into DaVinci. I'm just going to drag and drop it into the media pool, change the frame rate, and we can drag and drop it into a new timeline. There we go. You can still see it's in this log view. And so this is kind of where people get a little bit stumped. But what we need to do is we need to go up to File, go to Project Settings. And then as we can see, we always want to check to make sure our resolution is matching and then our frame rate. So both of those match for me. We're going to come to the Color Management tab. The Color Science, by default, is set to DaVinci. We want to go ahead and use ACES. The main reason we're using ACES is because it's a very standardized color space inside of every single program, as well as pretty much everything that I've done in my career has used an ACES workflow. So if you're transferring between different programs or different artists, it's always going to be the exact same. And so it just makes that process so much easier. So anyways, our ACES version that we're going to be using is ACES 1.2. Our input and output transform. Now these are very dependent on what you're actually wanting to do with the footage. Since I shot this footage myself, I actually know the input transform that we need to put. If you're on a visual effects set or anything like that, you want to make sure that you know that information, whether you need to ask somebody or just record it as a data wrangler on the day. You always want to make sure you have that information. Since I shot it on a Sony FX30, we're going to go ahead and come down to Sony S-Log 3. That is the default kind of log version of pretty much every Sony camera. So we can see here, and then I did shoot it in a Cine gamut. And so we do want to do S-Log 3 Cine gamut right here. And then that is the input transform. Now the output transform, what we actually need to set that to. Since we're going to be doing many different things inside of Blender, DaVinci, Nuke, even stuff like that, I want to be working in a linear format. And so since I know that I want to be working in a linear workflow, we can go ahead and come over here. We want to be in ACES CG. That is the one that I find that works the best for me, just kind of getting out all the variables and making a super nice workflow. So ACES CG right here, we can save that. As you can see, it's changed the color up here. Don't worry if it looks very bad to your eye. This is a linear kind of look, and so it looks a little bit raw, and so that is going to be very nice for Blender, Nuke, DaVinci, all of that will read this in properly, no worries. So anyways, we'll go over here to the Delivery tab. This is very important. We want to be working in a linear kind of EXR sequence. As you can see, our format up here is set by QuickTime by default. There's also people like to use PNG, JPEG, TIFF files, all that type of stuff. The reason we want to be working in EXR is because EXR is natively a linear format. that. And so that's very, very important for our workflow. We can go up to EXR codec. We want to change to RGB half DWAA. I just find that DWAA saves a little bit of space and it doesn't really compromise that much on quality. So we'll save that. Some other things that I like to do is come over to File. I like to go ahead and start the clip at frame 1. This is very dependent on your own workflow. I know certain people like to start at 1001, but we're going to use 4 digits of the frame file just to save a little bit of number space down there. Go to video, and that is pretty much everything. We'll go ahead and save this in a new location. And so you do want to make sure you have its own folder. So I make an image sequence folder. We're going to select that folder, then you can name it whatever you want. Test.background underscore, and then the frame number will be after that. So that is all good. And then we can go ahead and add to render queue and render all right there. And so it'll go ahead and render out the EXR sequence. We can take a look at what it's doing. So again, it'll be every single frame will be its own EXR file. And so we'll read that into the next program that we're going to be using. Okay, so now hopping on over to Blender or whatever next program that you're going to be using, I just want to showcase in Blender inside of Nuke and then the final kind of transform back into DaVinci Resolve. As you can see, we have the default scene loaded in here. Now, this is heavily dependent on kind of where you're actually loading this in. I'm going to be using it as a background image for the camera, but it's pretty much the same exact workflow, minus a few things here and there, depending if you need to go into compositing or motion tracking or anything like that. Before we get started, I do want to say that we are going to be working inside of ACES, inside of Blender. So if I go to the render tab up here and then down to color management, you can see I already have the display device set to ACES and then the view transform set to sRGB. This is not by default. You should see something like Filmic, AGX, standard, anything right there. Now I actually went ahead and installed ACES inside of Blender. I have a YouTube short going over exactly how I did it, but also Jacob from Inlight VFX has an amazing series talking about how to actually install ACES inside of Blender. And so I'll have both of those links down below if you want to go ahead and check out how I actually went ahead and put ACES inside the scene, because that's a very, very important. Blender doesn't natively come with ACES as a display device, and so we do need that into the program. Anyways, we can see we have this scene set up. Let's go ahead and read it into the background of our camera. So to do that, let's select camera, go to background, the camera settings, background images. We'll check that, add image, and go to movie clip, and we'll open up our clip. Again, we're going to be reading in that EXR sequence that we just made. So we're going to hit A, open the clip, and there you go. Now you can see if I turn the opacity up, you can see we have the footage into the background. So it looks pretty good. The color is a little bit not accurate, and that is because by default, our color space down here is set to linear. So if you remember, again, inside of DaVinci, we did this from a S-Log3. So that's why I shot the camera in. And then we're going to transfer this into an ACES CG workflow. And so again, for our color space, instead of linear, we need ACES CG, and we'll let that load for a little bit. And there you go. Now this looks much, much more natural. This is exactly how I remember shooting it into the camera. And so now we know that the proper color space is set up. So yeah, this is where you would do your CGI, do anything right there. One quick thing that I want to point out is if you're doing any assets or anything, we'll just quickly kind of put an object over here. Just like right here, I'll make a quick kind of shader for it. So if you have like image textures or anything like that, this is something that you're going to have to do. So we'll go just put like a random texture onto it, plug that into the color, and then vice versa. If you have another kind of thing, we'll make a duplicate of this, set to non-color. This is just a placeholder for like a normal map. If you had that in like a PBR workflow, normal, roughness, specular, metallic, all those type of PBR workflows. This is kind of a more default setup that you would have, an sRGB color space and a non-color color space for the normal maps and stuff like that. This is actually incorrect, and this is very kind of tricky thing to understand when you're trying to learn this workflow. But basically, these color spaces are incorrect for the ACES kind of transform that we're doing. And so what we need to do is go ahead and transform this. Instead of sRGB, we want to be working in a roll map paint. And then instead of a non-color for the color space over here, we want to be using roll data right here. And so there's a great add-on that I highly recommend you guys check out. Not sponsored or anything. You can check it out down in the description below. It's called Color Spacer. It allows us to go ahead and automatically changes, because if you have a ton of assets into a scene, ton of materials, like hundreds of materials, it's going to be a huge pain to go ahead and individually change those right here. So huge shout out to Jamie on the Discord. Speaking of the Discord, I'd greatly appreciate it if you guys go hop on over there. I want to chat with you guys, and there is some amazing resources and community kind of events that we have going on over there. But anyway, shout out to Jamie on the Discord for turning me on to the Color Spacer add-on. All we need to do is, instead of color, again, everything that we want to be color, we want to be roll matte paint. So we'll come here, roll matte paint. Non-color, we want to be roll data right there. So that is super simple. All you need to do now is hit A to select everything, or if you just want to apply it to specific assets, you can just select those assets. And then we're going to hit this magic button, and it should automatically change all of those color nodes to be the proper color space right there. If anything isn't changing, by the way, that's probably to do with the tags. So go to edit tags over here, and as you can see, we have all these different tags that it tries to search for to actually go ahead and transfer them. So when you're doing like a PBR workflow or anything like that, it should have one of these kind of different codes into the naming convention of the actual file. And if it doesn't, I remember what I was doing some kind of nodes and stuff like that that had an opacity and an alpha channel and all that stuff. So all I had to do was literally just type in opacity, or exactly kind of what the string of text was in the file name. And you don't want to do any uppercase letters or any commas or anything like that, just a space and lowercase. And then it looks for those individual text items in the name, and so then it will go ahead and populate them. So just keep that in mind if you're having any trouble with your own specific PBR setup or anything like that. You do want to make sure you find the actual tag inside of whatever the name of the file is. And so just quick tip right there. Next, the final thing that we need to do, now that we have all of our textures into the proper color space, let's go ahead and talk about compositing and rendering this out of Blender. So we're going to go ahead and hit use nodes. I'm just going to do a quick kind of simple setup of what you typically would see in a visual effects Blender file. We would do a file output node to render out multiple kind of passes. You would come up here to node, add some inputs. We want to change the file format instead of PNG to OpenEXR or OpenEXR multilayer. Again, PNG, MOV, TIFF, JPEG, all those are come with baking in some gamma curves. We want to be working in a linear workflow throughout this entire process. So the only one that we want to be using here is either OpenEXR or OpenEXR multilayer. Typically, I'll do OpenEXR multilayer if I'm doing any multipass compositing or anything like that. Now, for our beauty passes, you can do float half. For any utility passes, such as like position, normal, UV, all that type of stuff, you want to be doing full, because you want to have that 32-bit depth. But for this, since we're just doing a couple of beauty passes, it doesn't matter here. Codec, I like to set to DWAA just because it's a little bit lossy, but it saves so much file space. I think it's worth it. Anyways, this is where you plug in some of your information right here. You would save a folder into wherever you're wanting to save the CG passes. The very, very important thing, this is something that I'm trying to teach myself to remember all the time, is you need to go ahead and change the color management down here. You can see by default, it says follow scene. If we go to override, again, when we set override, it's just showing the default kind of path that it's going to render as inside of Blender. You can see the color space is set to linear. Again, linear is not the color space that we're going to be working in, since we are working in ACES or an ACES workflow. We want to set it to an ACES linear workflow. If you weren't using ACES, linear would be totally fine here. But since we are, we do want to make sure that we're working in ACES CG. So right here, ACES CG, we're just going to put that. Again, very, very important, because if you don't do that, then you might have to convert it differently inside of Nuke. And so I just like working in ACES CG right from the get-go. Anyways, that is pretty much it. This is where you would come and render all your CGI passes. Next, let's hop into Nuke to actually show you how to import those in and to get the color space looking accurate inside of compositing. Okay, so now we're in compositing. I'm going to be using Nuke today, but of course, the same exact things apply if you're using After Effects, Natron, Fusion, anything like that. It's going to be the exact same process. You'll just have to find it in the own settings and menus of that kind of software you're using. Anyways, as you can see, here here's the quick comp that I'm doing inside of Nuke. I just quickly want to showcase this because of how easy it is to match inside of Blender and then bring it into Nuke. If I was to do this without a ACES workflow, it would take me so many gray nodes, so many multipass compositing to get in a result that looks like this. But since we had an ACES workflow inside of Blender, I was able to match the lighting perfectly, and I don't even have a single color node affecting the color. It matches that well. And so I just quickly want to showcase why we would do something like this. This is a super simple comp for the result that we're getting. So I just want to showcase that quickly. Anyways, so we have a brand new project over here. We're going to go ahead and R to read in the footage. And so we'll go ahead and locate wherever you downloaded, or sorry, installed the footage right here. So our EXR sequence, our original kind of footage that we had, we'll open that up. And by default, you can see we're in a scene linear workspace. And so what we want to do before we do anything is you can hit S over here. You want to go ahead and set up the format and the FPS, all that type of stuff. Real quickly, I do want to say I am decreasing the resolution of my format, and so we'll have to add a reformat node in, but typically you want to be working in whatever resolution that you're working in, and so just keep that in mind. We'll do a little bit of tweaking here to get it more to my result with this, just because I wanted to render at a lower resolution because I didn't need 4K. So anyway, we'll come over to the project settings. Most importantly, we need to go up to color. By default, it's set to like Nuke and then Nuke default. So this is kind of what you should be seeing right now. What we want to change it to is we want to change it to OCIO right here, and then OCIO config, we want to be using ACES 1.2. And so as you can see, it's automatically changed everything. So now we have a working space is in ACES CG. Very important to kind of notice that. And as you can see, it's set to scene linear. So scene linear right here is in ACES CG. For my sanity, what you could also do is come over to the input transform, and you're going to change that from scene linear to ACES CG right here, just so it kind of makes sense in your own head. Anyways, that is the footage. Real quickly, I do want to showcase the footage is looking nice over here, but it's still looking a little bit not accurate. This is my personal preference because I'm using a Rec 709 LUT on my camera to actually preview things. And so since I'm using Rec 709 and I'm probably going to export whatever I'm doing in Rec 709, I want to be seeing stuff in Rec 709. So even though we're have a working space of ACES CG, it's applying a sRGB kind of view transform on top of that for this view over here. That is totally fine if you're working in sRGB, but I want to be working in Rec 709, so we'll just change it from sRGB to Rec 709 ACES. Again, this is just a view transform, so when we're rendering out of Nuke or anything like that, we're going to be rendering in an EXR format, so it's still going to be an ACES CG, so don't worry there. It's just a view for our eyes to make good decisions on the view over here. Next, let's read in some CGI that I rendered out. So we'll come over to where I downloaded that. We'll come over here, and there you go. Here is our CG passes, so we'll read that in. It is a multi-layer file, so I do have to shuffle this out, and I'll read in my CGI pass, and there you go. Now you can see our CGI is also being read in correctly. You can see it's scene linear. Again, the same exact thing. I just want to make sure we're working in ACES CG, so I'll change it right there. We'll go ahead and merge these two things together, and there you go. We have everything set up. Again, like I was saying before, since I'm actually formatting it down, instead of 4K, I'm doing like 1440p. I'll just add a quick reformat node to our footage. It should be totally fine there. So there you go. We have everything matching. It looks pretty good. That is everything that you would pretty much do inside of Nuke. You just want to make sure everything you're working in is going to be ACES CG. Now, to actually write out of Nuke, what we're going to do is add a write node. You can, of course, save this wherever you want to save this. I'm just going to make a quick kind of destination. You do .hashtag EXR. The hashtags are just a frame number, and so you can have as many or few as you want. And then what we can do over here, 16-bit half, that is totally fine. I shot this in a 10-bit video format is what my camera shoots in, and so 16-bit is even over that, and so we are totally covered in that. Compression, we have zip. I'm going to change that to DWA again. And then the output transform, this is the very important part that we want to make sure we set up correctly. By default, it's set to scene linear. Again, scene linear and ACES CG, I believe, are pretty much the same thing, but I just want to doubly make sure that ACES CG, so compositing linear ACES CG right here, and then we can go ahead and render this out. You would render out whatever you want there. And then finally, we need to go back into DaVinci. DaVinci is kind of where we finally want to go ahead and import the process into. This is also heavily dependent on kind of what you're exporting this to. If you're exporting this straight out to YouTube, to Instagram, anything like that, you most likely want to be in the sRGB or Rec 709 workspace. For example, if you're doing a visual effects client or something like that, and they might be doing some color correction, or they might already have done some color and they're just sending you the log footage to add the visual effects to, you want to make sure you remain in the exact proper color space that you imported it in originally. So I'll kind of show you both of those. So we'll go ahead and import in our comp that we were doing into the thing. So I just rendered out a few frames of our kind of thing. You can see this EXR sequence right here. I'll just select the folder that the EXR sequence is in and drag and drop that into our timeline. And as you can see, it looks beautiful. It looks exactly like how we had it inside of our camera. That is, of course, not correct. We do need to go ahead and come up to File, Project Settings, and we need to do some final conversion. And so if you've been following along, you should kind of know what these input transforms are that we want to be doing, but just in case not, I want to try to explain it to you. So input transform, that is what we're going to be inputting into the thing. Now, as before, we were doing slog3 because that's what our camera shot in. But now, since we already converted it to an ACES CG workflow, and we rendered ACES CG out of Nuke, we need to go ahead and put ACES CG into our input transform. So right here, and then our output transform. This is the one that I was talking about. If you want to go ahead and render it as Rec 709, sRGB, slog3, anything that you're doing there. So we'll come down here. I'll show you the Rec 709 first. So we'll go try to find Rec 709. There we go. And then we'll hit save. And as you can see, it's a perfect Rec 709. It's exactly kind of how the camera was seeing it. It's perfectly matched. Now the CGI is in. This is where you could do some color correction, whatever you want there. And then also render this out for, YouTube, Instagram, stuff like that. You would come over here to the kind of tab down here, go to Format. QuickTime, we would go codec. I've been using H.265 recently. Make sure you have some audio if you have any audio, all that stuff. This is the final export settings I would recommend if you're doing any of that stuff. And it would be in this proper color space. You can see it's looking as accurate as possible now. Next is if you need to be rendering this out for a client, say they need to do some color work and it needs to be in the exact color space that you rendered it out in. It's super, super simple. All you would need to do is come up to File, Project Settings. We're going to go back to Color Management. And so again, we're going to keep that ACES CG because again, inside of Nuke, we rendered out of ACES CG. The only thing we're changing is the output transform. We're going to go all the way back to our original transform that we did, which for me was Sony S-Log3 S-Gamut3 Cine. So this right here, we're going to go ahead and hit save there. And as you can see, this is the exact same log look as our S-Log3. And so if you render this out, you can render this out as like a ProRes, MOV, you can do EXR, anything that they need, DPX, anything like that. This is where you would render that out for the client, and it should be in the exact same color space that they gave you. And so that makes directors, cinematographers, VFX artists super, super happy is when you can do the exact same color process and give it back to them. It's a must in the industry. And so I highly recommend that you guys learn this process because you are going to be handed a shot like this and expected to be send it back in the same exact color space. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much everything about the ACES workflow with visual effects. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense of how you want to go ahead and transfer a file and keep the color management the same throughout the entire process. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Again, we have a Patreon and Discord. Links are down below for those. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Peace.